So as I said before, these are three directories that the Python will check for a module. Now, if we don't have, if we want to import something from our directory, we will need to do something. So in this case, for example, let me open our example folder. Examples. We have to create a file that is called init. As you can see here, .py. So it should be a Python file, not a text file here. But if we don't do this, it will still import. But if we want to import from subfolders or parent folders, then we need to include this file in parent folders and subfolders in every folder, so that we can import from these folders. Now, I'm not going to show an example for that, but you can try it by yourself. So here let's get back to the slides. Okay. So compile Python files. So sometimes if you run, you will find, as you can see here in the example folder, we have a PyCache file. Because we ran these codes, both of these codes, we have a file that was compiled. It is called PYC. Now, if we run this code, the compiler doesn't need to compile it again because we compiled it, and we haven't changed it. Now, if we change it again, then it will compile it again, and then we will re-update the content of these files. Now, these files means that they are compiled and they don't need to be compiled again. Now, let's move on. Now, some tips. There is the O flag and the PYO file, which I would not mention, but feel free to read this content or Google it. It is very simple and self-explanatory. Now, let's talk about standard modules. Python comes with a library of standard modules described in the Python library reference. Now, if you want to look them up, you can Google standard modules Python, and then you'll have a list of all these standard libraries. And we have already discussed, actually, some of the common libraries that we have used before, and these are actually some of them are standard libraries. So in this case, we are using Python path is the path for these standard libraries. The directory name, this is the function that a built-in function that can be used to print the directory of any module or any function that has the path in it. So if you print, for example, the dir, which is directory of NumPy, then it will print all the functions that are inside NumPy, or subfolders. It will not print the inside of the subfolder, but it will print the name of the subfolder. Then what you could do is use like a directory NumPy dot that subfolder, and it will print the content of that subfolder. Packages. So we have already talked about dotted packages, and I have shown some example. So if you, for example, if you want to access the subfolder of a package or a module, you will have to use dot notation, which means that if you want, for example, B is the subfolder and A is the name of the module, then if you want to access that subfolder, a function in that subfolder, then you will have to do A.B.C if your function is called C. These are some extra details about other properties of dotted packages. Now, as I said, I have already explained what this does. Importing star from a package. So star does not import all the submodules from a package. It just imports the names. Basically, it imports the address of that name, and then next time you use it, it will import it. So it is kind of a nice way to import, but it is not very efficient. I would consider from library import the specific functions more adequate for any type of code, because it is, as I said, I consider that from package import specific functions more better coding. So but it is still okay to use whatever way you feel good to import. So here we have intra-package references. So I'm not going to talk about this because it's going to take time, but you could look it up or you can read the content of these slides. So here I'm going to talk about some of the important libraries that we mentioned before we used. So sys is a system library. It contains stuff about your system where you can access them, functions that can help you access your system or do something to the system. For example, shut down the system or shut down the program or the algorithm. Same goes for OS. OS is an operating system library. It's more like, for example, you can add files, you can add a directory, you can delete a directory, you can rename the directory, you can do all sorts of input-output stuff to your operating system. Now, last, which is math. It's a very useful library that has all these mathematic functions such as square root, logarithmic, cosine, sinus, etc. It also has like some constants such as pi and other. If you want, you could like access the documentation of these libraries here, or if you met a new library, you can just Google it, and probably the first website you'll see is the description of that library. Now, let's talk about files input and output.